Hello, welcome back to Dear Parents. I am Spank, back here with Dr. Ryan. Last episode, Dr. Ryan shared with us about some tips for dealing with a screamer. We hope those were helpful to you. However, I believe that some of you parents might be thinking, I teach my child, I not reward him with bad behavior, and I show him love, care, patience, but he just persistently naughty, not obeying me. What should I do? Is it okay to spank him? Can I spank him? Well, let's ask Dr. Ryan today. Hello.
Hello.
So what do you think if a child just persistently naughty, doesn't want to obey, doesn't matter what the parents do, but he just, no, I'm just gonna do what I want to do. Can I spank him? Should I spank him? Is it okay?
So this is a great question, and it's a question that every parent has when they have a child who is not obeying. And to tell you the truth, almost everybody is going to have a child that really does not want to obey. I mean, that's actually a normal thing for children. And so the question is it right for parents to use spanking, or we could call it physical discipline, when they're training their children? Now, in the past, everyone thought, yeah, that's normal. Spanking your children, if your children's acting naughty, if they're being disobedient or disrespectful, they need a good whooping. And that's just the way it's always been for centuries, for millennia.
Yeah.
But in recent years, a lot of people have started to question that. They're like, they're a little concerned. They think, is it right to hit our children? Is that teaching them the right thing?
Sounds
teaching them
like
violence? Yeah. We're using violence on our children. Is that just going to teach them to be more violent also? Yeah. So they're really concerned about this, and they might remember times when they were children, when their parents got mad and spanked them out of anger, and they might be thinking, shouldn't we try and train our children gently? They have something called gentle parenting nowadays.
Yes.
But shouldn't we use gentleness and kindness to train our children, not violence? Well, I can understand both of these sets of people. I understand the people in the past, and I understand the people nowadays who are a little concerned about it.
Yes.
In the past, for millennia, people have used spanking, though, and it's borne lots of good fruit in the past. So I really don't. I'm reluctant to just take this tried and true method and just throw it out without thinking carefully about it. But I can see that people who are concerned about spanking, that they have a point.
Yeah.
I mean, spanking your child can easily turn into violence, into child abuse,
Yes.
Into really hurting your child if the parents don't have good self-control.
Yes.
And so it can be very dangerous, actually. So when I have a problem like this, when I have a question, should I use this method or that method in child training? The first thing what I believe I need to do is I need to ask, what does God teach about this question?
Yeah.
Does God teach us anything about this? And in the Bible, which is God's Word, He actually tells us a lot about how fathers and mothers are to train their children. So we'll look at first at a verse that we looked at last time. We're going to look at again in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. It says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." So last time, in our last episode, we read this and we learned, well, we're not supposed to aggravate or provoke our children to anger. Yeah. And this is going to be really important. If we're going to use spanking in our child training, we need to know how to do it properly so that we don't aggravate our children or we don't provoke them to anger. But I want to read a little further in this verse and learn a little further. And it says that we're supposed to do what? We're supposed to bring up our children. Well, bring them up means we're supposed to raise them to become adults. That's the whole point of having children, is to raise them and teach them so they can become adults one day. They stand beside us, not just underneath us.
Yes.
And how are we supposed to do that? It says we want to raise them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. So this word discipline is actually a translation of a Greek word called paideia. And the paideia is a very broad term. It means that we're supposed to, it's the way of training and raising and teaching a child so they can live in community, live in society with peace and with happiness, so that they'll flourish in society. But wrapped up in this term is also the idea, which is why they say discipline. Wrapped up in this idea is that the way you pass this teaching on, the way you prepare them to live in society is through physical discipline, spanking them in order to teach them and correct them. That's how you bring them to the point where they're able to live with joy and peace and happiness in society. And so it shows us that this idea of discipline, including physical discipline, is part of how we're supposed to train our children, even when we're being careful not to provoke them to anger. Now, the Bible talks more clearly about specifically physical discipline in the Proverbs, the book of Proverbs. And so I want to look at a few of these Proverbs to see what God has to say about spanking specifically. The first one we'll look at is Proverbs chapter 22, verse 15. And it says, "Folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline drives it far from him." So we can see here clearly that this is talking about spanking. It's talking about a rod of discipline. And what is it? What do we learn from this verse? Well, we learn that foolishness is bound up or is stuck in our children's hearts. They're actually born this way. This is part of being a human. I talked about how all children are going to, unless you have a child who really wants to please everyone, all children are going to have this rebelliousness, this stubbornness, this wanting to go their own way, and it will disobey their parents. And it comes from this foolishness that's bound up in their hearts. Now, a lot of people, when they think of foolishness, they think, well, that the child's just not smart. They're kind of stupid, which is true. Children are not smart yet. Their brains are still developing. Other people think, well, foolishness has to do with it. They don't have enough education. They haven't been educated yet. And it's true that children need education, but the Bible, when it talks about foolishness, when it talks about folly, it's not talking about a lack of education or even a lack of intelligence. What it's talking about is rebelliousness and sin. It's talking about a child who is intentionally being naughty, who doesn't want to obey their mom and dad, who wants to do what is wrong. If the problem is foolishness that's just because they're not smart or not educated, well, parents can just teach them to fix the problem. But if the problem has to do with rebelliousness and with sin, well, just teaching is not going to be enough. You're going to need the rod of discipline.
Physical discipline.
Physical discipline. Now, when they say a rod, that means that it's a little a switch to spank with. A switch to spank with. So let's look at another proverb. Let's look at Proverbs chapter 13, verse 24. Here it says, "Whoever spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is diligent to discipline him." So again, we see that the rod is physical discipline. Spankings is what it's talking about here. It says it's the physical discipline or spankings are incredibly important. God tells us they're incredibly important. In fact, God says if you don't spank your child, if you don't physically discipline him, it's like you hate him. Now, most
parents probably won't think of them.
They don't think like that. They're
hating their kids.
If someone doesn't want to spank, if they think that it's wrong to spank, they're not going to think I'm hating my child. No, they think I love my child. I don't hate him, and so I don't want to hit him. I don't want to use violence. But if we don't spank our children, what are we doing? We're leaving foolishness in their heart. We're not chasing the foolishness out of their heart. We're leaving it in there to hurt them as they grow older. And so it's actually like we're hating them, even though we're trying to love them. And then let's look at one more proverb here. Proverbs chapter 23, verses 13 and 14. "Do not withhold discipline from a child, If you strike him with a rod, he will not die. If you strike him with the rod, you will save his soul from Sheol. Now, number one, Sheol, that means the grave. So that means you're saving his life from death, is basically what it's saying there. Now, in order to understand this proverb, we do need to understand a little bit about the type of literature that proverbs are. So proverbs are a type of literature that use a little short, pithy statement or phrase. It's kind of catchy, easy to remember, and it teaches a general truth. Now, to all the proverbs, there are always exceptions to a lot of these proverbs because they're not trying to deal with every situation. And so there are exceptions, but in general, a proverb is speaking a general truth about the world or about people. And so from this proverb, we can learn that not spanking our child is more dangerous to their life than spanking them. Now, there are exceptions, like I said. If there's a guy out there who gets really angry and starts hitting his child really strongly, then it's possible his child could die from a spanking. So saying that they could never die from a spanking would not be true, but this is talking about a general truth. So in general, if someone's using spankings to train their child, what they're actually doing is they're actually helping to save their child from the child's foolishness, which is dangerous to them. So if we want to think about this in a concrete example, let's say we have a little child who is really, really naughty and doesn't like to obey mommy and daddy at all. And he's really energetic and rambunctious, and he wants to run into the street. Now, when a parent grabs the child and stops him from running the street and then spanks him to teach him, then teaches him, you have to obey mommy and daddy. When we say don't run in the street, you don't. And so he's teaching them to obey mom and dad, and he teaches them you never run into the street. It's dangerous. Yes. So the parent using spankings to teach these two lessons is actually going to save the child from a dangerous car accident. They could get run over and even die. And so the spanking helps us to save our children from their foolishness.
Yes.
So we can see, just to kind of summarize, looking at all these verses, we can see the Bible is very clearly says that we should use spankings. Not just spankings. There's lots of training that goes involved. Spankings is just one tool, but it's an important tool that we need to use when we're training our children. And the Bible actually gives us one more reason that we're supposed to use spankings, that we should use discipline with our children, and it's a really important one. And the reason is that God actually disciplines His own children. God disciplines His own children. So I want to read. It's a little bit of a longer passage here in Hebrews, but Hebrews chapter 12, verses 5 through 11. Says, "My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor be weary when reproved by Him. For the Lord disciplines the one He loves and chastises every son whom He receives. It is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? If you are left without discipline, in which all have participated, then you are illegitimate children and not sons. Besides this, we had earthly fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them. Shall we not much more be subject to the Father of spirits and live? For they disciplined us for a short time, as it seemed best to them. But He disciplines us for our good, that we may share His holiness. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it." So we can see from this verse that, number one, discipline is not pleasant. It's painful. But it's just painful for a short period of time. If we think about our example with the child running to the street, if the child gets hit by the car, he's going to be in pain. If he lives, he's going to be in pain for a long time. Whereas if a spanking on his bottom is he's going to be in pain for a short period of time. So that it's painful, but it's just for a temporary period of time. And when we see how God does it, God does this to His own children. It says God loves his children, so he disciplines them.
Yeah.
Now, so if we're God's children, he's disciplining us. It's like he's spanking us, and it might not be pleasant, but he's doing it.
Yeah.
It says that God does it for our good. For our good. So if we are true children of God, if we've believed in Jesus and we've become his children, then now he loves us, and we know that when he disciplines us, he's doing it for our good. And this shows us a kind of a stark difference between God is disciplining us. He's not punishing us. He's disciplining us, not punishing us.
I actually heard of a lot of parents saying, I will punish you. So, I mean, what is the difference? Is it different between the word discipline and punishment?
So now some people use punishment as a short term to just mean spankings or discipline. But if we think about the meaning of the words, they're actually very different. And this passage shows us why. What is the purpose of discipline? It's for the good of the one being spanked. If we're spanking a child, it's for their good. If God is spanking us, if he's disciplining us, it's for our good. Whereas punishment is not for the person's good who's being punished. Punishment is actually about justice. It's about someone receiving what they deserve. And so the clearest way I can think of to explain this concept would be to think about the government. Now, nowadays, some people think about the government like a father or mother, and they think of it disciplining people. But in general, most ideas about the government, if someone does something wrong, then the government has a responsibility to punish them. So let's say someone goes out and murders another person. Well, the government has a responsibility to punish the murderer.
Yeah.
So they have to go and capture the murderer, put them on trial, and when they convict them, then they need to kill the murderer. They need to put the murderer to death because that murderer killed someone else. Yes. They need to give justice. They need to give the person what they deserve. This is not about, so punishing this person is not for the murderer's good. It's not to help them. Yes. It's to help society, so there's people aren't running around murdering each other. Yes. And it's for justice sake, but it's not for the good of the person being punished. And so it's true that God does punish sin. God punishes sin. And so if people sin, if a person sins, unless they repent and turn to God, they will be punished for it. Eventually they're going to die. And they'll have to go to hell to receive the punishment that they deserve for their sin against God. But when we repent, when we believe in Jesus, when we become God's children, God doesn't think about punishment anymore. He doesn't think that I need to give those people what they deserve. He thinks, I love those people. Those are my children. This is my son here. I love him. I want to do what is good for him. I'm going to spank him. I'm going to discipline him to teach him to walk in the right way. Not to continue going in the wrong way, but to start going the right way. And I'm going to do it for my son's good. For my son's good. And so God does this out of love, and he does this with love and with patience toward us. And so we need to learn from God. We need to do the same thing for our children. Yes. We need to discipline, to spank our children, but we need to do it with love and with patience, just like God does. And we do it for the good, for the benefit of our children, just like God does.
Yes. So they're really, now that what you said, I really feel like, so spanking is a very beneficial. Would you mind summarize it in just short conclusion of the benefit of this?
The benefits. So there are great benefits if it's done right. Yes. Now, if you're doing it without self-control, and you're doing it out of anger or because you want to give your child what they deserve, to punish them, then it's not going to have the benefits. But if you do it out of love and patience, the way God teaches us to, then it has great benefits. Well, discipline or spanking, number one, it helps to, as the proverb says, it helps to rescue our children from foolishness and sin. And then spanking also has the benefits of helping our children to listen to what we say and to remember what we say. to remember mom and dad's words of instruction. Discipline can help save our children even from an early death, as one of the other Proverbs pointed out.
Yeah.
It can save our children from an early death that comes from living foolishly as they become a teenager or young adult. Some of the things that cause children and young adults to die early, like drug addiction, or getting drunk, alcoholism, or getting involved in like violent gangs and things. All of these things are dangerous to our children's lives, and spankings and discipline early on can help to turn them away from that path in life. And finally, discipline can help to bless our children. It can bless our children by helping us to teach them God's ways.
Thank you very much. So according to the Bible, the answer to the question, is it okay to spank our children, would be yes, it is okay. And in fact, it has a lot of benefits to our children. But it's really, really important to do it without anger, and do it with the idea of we want to do it to help our children, to save them, and because we love them. But however, a lot of people might have never seen it done, might have never seen spanking done properly, correctly. They might even have question, or I might have question of what is the proper age to start physical discipline, and how hard should that physical discipline be? What is too hard?
Yes.
And also, are there any other ways to discipline our children if you don't want to do physical discipline? We will come back and talk about those topics next time. See you then.
See you then.
Bye.